Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree, and if you're new here on this channel, I like to cover my experience with budgeting as well as cover other personal finance topics. And in this video, I'm going to be doing a 2024 end of year review. Now, the inspiration for this video actually comes from a video that I saw a few weeks ago on one of my favorite personal finance channels here on YouTube. And the name of that channel is The Money Guy Show. So if you haven't checked them out, please do. And if I can, I'll try and link their video down in the description. And so on this channel, they recently came out with a video that was titled 9 Things You Should Do Before 2024 Ends. And I thought it was a phenomenal list of items to look at before we close out the year 2024, as well as the foundation to set up goals for 2025 and things that I can incorporate into my upcoming annual budget. And just for a little bit of background, for the last 6 years, I've been trying to find the right way to do money. And over the years, that meant reading a lot of personal finance books, discovering Dave Ramsey and the baby steps. And then about a year and a half ago, I came across this channel on YouTube, and it was just completely life-changing. They have so many free resources, and ever since I've been watching them, I have grown in confidence when it comes to personal finance. On this channel, they have what is called the financial order of operations, and it's basically to help guide you with where your next dollar should go. And so as I did this 2024 end of year review, a lot of those financial order of operation steps are going to be pulled into this. And I definitely encourage you to check out the Money Guy episode as well so that you can go through these 9 steps for yourself before closing out 2024. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first thing that you're gonna wanna do before ending 2024 is asking yourself, do you have your risks covered? And so this section is all about looking at the cash that you have on hand. Do you have enough cash to cover your highest deductibles? Do you have enough cash to have a fully funded emergency fund? And then where exactly is that cash sitting right now? So the first step of the financial order of operations that they discuss is covering your highest deductible. And this is a step that you would do prior to maybe paying off your high interest debt. And it's actually very similar to the Dave Ramsey baby step 1, where you save up $1,000. The biggest difference is that instead of just saving up $1,000, you will instead find out what is your highest deductible and then save up enough money to meet that amount. So I did go and take a look at all of my deductibles. And so for me, that meant taking a look at my healthcare deductible, my auto deductible, and my renter's insurance deductible. So my renter's insurance and my auto insurance both had a $500 deductible. And then I'm currently on a copay medical plan. So my deductible was $1,400 on that plan. And so I do have enough money in my savings account to cover my highest deductible of $1,400. So then the next level of risk that you want to cover is having an emergency fund. And this is typically going to range from 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And essentially, how much money do you need to have to keep the household running? And so for this, I actually popped over to my budget and I identified for each category whether or not it was a need or a want. So for example, most of my bills were needs, including my rent, my car loan, electricity, my phone, internet, auto insurance, groceries, and gas. And the only real significant change here was that I did change my cash budget from $140 to $50, just because that was more realistic with my actual spending over the last couple of months. And then when it came to my everyday expenses, some additional categories that I identified as a need were my home goods, my health category, and then both of my pets' spending accounts. And so essentially what I was coming up with was maybe like worst case scenario, if I were to lose my job, what were all of the fixed and variable expenses that I would need to be covered for? And so in order to keep my household running, I would need $2,889. So for a 3-month emergency fund, this would mean that I would need $8,667 saved. And then for a 6-month emergency fund, I would need $17,334. Now, I currently have $14,862 in my emergency fund account, and that comes out to a little bit over 5 months. And so this helped highlight that as I'm going into 2025, I need to make sure that I'm planning to add more money to my emergency fund to get to that 6-month mark. And then I wanted to make a quick note that everybody's situation is a little different. So a 3-month emergency fund may be enough in some scenarios. I think when it comes to my current scenario, I do have a single income from one job, and then I also have a dependent. And so I think all of these factors increase my risk level. And also looking at, if I did lose my job, what would be a realistic amount of time before I could get another job and get back on track? And I think 3 months is just not enough in that scenario, and I'd feel a lot more comfortable with 6 months and maybe even more than that down the road. And then the next thing when it comes to cash is, are there any known expenses coming up? And so for me, I have a variety of sinking funds in place, so I'm pretty covered for the most part, especially because I've really outlined a lot of my annual expenses throughout the year. But from previous videos, I will need to look at adding a Thanksgiving sinking fund, as well as a sinking fund for our new kitten. I'm also expecting to take a couple of trips next year with the family. I'll need to look at making sure I'm setting enough money aside in order to fund those trips. And so finally, where is that cash sitting? And so for me, most of my cash is sitting in a high yield savings account at 3.80%. And then I've got maybe about 2 months worth of living expenses in my checking account, just to kind of help with some of the bigger transactions that occur month to month. So the second thing that you're gonna wanna look at in your end of year review is whether or not you're getting that free money. And this ties back to the financial order of operations. Step 2 is to make sure that you're getting your employer match. And so for me, my employer match is 6%, and I am currently making sure to get that full 6%. And then another employer perk is an employer stock purchase plan, and I'm currently not participating in that. And then when it comes to contributing to your 401k, whether or not you're doing pre-tax or Roth. And so what I really like about the Money Guys, they've put together a resource that helps you kind of make that decision whether pre-tax or Roth is right for you and what to take into consideration. And so they recommend looking at your marginal tax rate. So if you are under 25%, you might want to consider Roth. If you're 25% to 30%, then you may have to evaluate whether pre-tax or Roth contributions makes the most sense. And then if you're over 30%, you'll want to consider a pre-tax contribution. And so for me, I fall under 25%, so I'm doing Roth contributions. So the next item on the 2024 end of year review is getting your liabilities in check. And in this section is where you might put together like a net worth statement. For me, I'll be calculating my net worth later on this year once my final paycheck comes in. But when it comes to liabilities for myself, I do have some credit cards, I have student loans, and I have an auto loan. So when it comes to my credit cards, I do pay those in full and I don't carry a balance. So I don't really have any work or planning that I need to do in the year 2025 for that. When it comes to student loans, I have $6,200 left. And then when it comes to my car loan, I have $15,366 left. And that brings it to a total of $21,566. And again, something that the Money Guy Show does that I really like is they put together a resource to help identify what you should be prioritizing and whether that's debt payoff or investing for the future. And so for example, when it comes to interest rates for cars, if you're between the ages of 20 to 29, then a high interest rate would be something over 10%. If you're between the age of 30 to 39, a high interest rate would be about 9%. And then if you're over the age of 40, an interest rate over 8% would be considered a high interest rate. So for me, I just refinanced my auto loan and I brought it down to 6.59% last month. And I fall within that age 30 to 39 bracket. So for me, I'm not going to be prioritizing paying off my car loan in the next year. And then when it comes to student loan interest rates, age 20 to 29, anything over a 6% would be considered a high interest rate. For age 30 to 39, it's anything over 5%. And then over the age of 40, it's anything over 4%. So I have 4 loans and 2 of them are like a 3.660% rate. And then the other 2 are a 4.60% rate. So they do fall below that 5%, but it has been lingering over me this final $6,000 and I really want to get it off my plate. So I don't know if in 2025 I'll prioritize it quite yet, but I think I am going to be looking at trying to pay that off in the next few years, well before I turn 40. And so the next section is all about maximizing tax-free money. And this is around HSAs and Roth IRAs and making sure those are fully funded. And so for me, I've been on a copay plan this past year, and I'm actually gonna be doing it again in the new year. And so I don't have access to an HSA, so I won't be maxing that out or really including it in my 2025 plans. And then when it comes to a Roth IRA, the maximum contribution this year was $7,000. And so I had $560 go in this past year. And then next year, I plan on continuing to contribute to it. I don't know that I'm gonna be maxing it out, but I will definitely be doing consistent contributions to it. Next is hitting the max when it comes to your 401k, and all about how close are you to maxing out your employer plans. And so this year, the maximum contribution for the 401k was $23,000, and I contributed $6,350. And so in 2025, I expect to contribute the same amount, if not more. And then the next category is all about your savings rate. And the Money Guy Show actually has a really great resource on this and why a savings rate of 25% can be so important. And when it comes to this 25% savings rate, this is specific to investing for the future. So this will include things like what you contributed to your 401k, to your HSA, to your Roth IRA, any kind of employee stock purchase plans, and to your taxable brokerage account. And then depending on how much you make, you can actually include your employer's match when calculating your savings rate for the year. And so when I put everything together, my total contribution came out to $14,488 for 2024, which came out to a 15% savings rate. So looking at 2025, I definitely want to try and push for 20%. And so that's something I'm going to be taking a look at when I put together my annual budget. And so then the next thing is all about abundance goals. And this is once you've hit that 25% savings rate and you're putting enough money aside for the future, you can start looking at other goals like a college fund for your kids. And something that I think that really hit home for me when it came to this section when they were doing this show is they were talking about how kids can always get grants, they can get scholarships, they can get loans, but there isn't necessarily the same when it comes to retirement. And so it's really important to be putting aside money for retirement before you start saving for some of these other goals. And so for me, I've been putting aside $100 every month for the last few years for my daughter's college fund. And so I'm gonna start looking at that in the upcoming year to figure out if I should go ahead and make that contribution to my retirement account until I can hit 25% and then continue. And of course, when it comes to my daughter's college fund, I did come up with a rough plan. So I hope to have a little bit of money saved in a 529 account. And then I also thought that I would cash flow a portion of it, and then hopefully she could get some scholarships, but if not, we could supplement with student loans where it made sense. Now, the next section doesn't really pertain to me personally, but I will bring it up, and that's all about whether or not to pay off your mortgage. So for me, I don't have a house and I'm currently not saving for a house. And right now I'm just focused on kind of like a financial foundation. And so my bigger focus is on making sure that I'm saving enough for retirement. And then the last section is all about generosity. And if you've got a little bit left over, what kind of donations you might be able to do, or maybe donating items around the house. And so I don't have any plans for that this year, but I would love to do more volunteering in life. And so I'd love to see if maybe next year, once I'm done with school and graduated and I have a little bit more time on my hands, whether I can use some of my weekends to maybe volunteer my time for different organizations. And so that is my 2024 end of year review. And I highly recommend this as a great exercise when it comes to looking at your personal finances. I think especially when it comes to knowing your numbers, what your target emergency fund number is, what your savings rate is, and then looking at how much money you've put aside over the year. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. If you found value in this video, please consider liking. And then if you'd like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye!